Good morning, everyone. I'm Isabella and this presentation has been made by me and my colleagues Antonia, Sofia, Martina, Igor, Natalia, and Eugenia. So today we're going to discuss a very important topic, which is what a manager needs to know about dominant designs. So here's a quick overview of the main points that we're going to discuss today. So starting from point 1, what is a dominant design? Point 2, how is it involved in the technological cycle? Point 3, why do dominant designs emerge? Point 4, how to identify a dominant design? Point 5, a dominant design or a standard? Point 6, how to win the battle of dominant designs? Point 7, how can managers adopt or exploit dominant designs? Point 8, how to promote a change of dominant designs. So starting from point 1, what is a dominant design? So the concept of dominant designs was first developed and introduced in the management literature as a technology management concept by William Abernathy and James Arabeck. So as we can see from the slide, there are several definitions of dominant design. So the first one, Abernathy and Arabeck in 1978 defined it as single architecture that establishes dominance in a product category. The second one, Arabeck in 1994 defined it the design that wins the allegiance of the marketplace, to which competitors and innovators must adhere if they hope to command a significant market following. The third one, Christensen, Suarez, and Arabeck in 1998 said that a dominant design emerges in a product category when one product's design specifications, consisting of a single or a complement of design features, define the product category's architecture. So through the dominant design, some key technological features become a de facto standard. A de facto standard differs from a de jure standard, as dominant designs often emerge from competition among several designs, so the market acceptance is essential. So how is it involved in the technological cycle? The definition of dominant design marks the end of an era of ferment and the beginning of an era of incremental change. So, as we can see on the right, the era of ferment was characterized by technical uncertainty, multiple competing product designs, and ambiguous user preferences, while the era of incremental technological process is characterized by retention and incremental technological process. So why do dominant designs emerge? The primary reason for the adoption of dominant designs is the intrinsic feature of most industries that show increasing returns to adoption, meaning that the more technology is used, the more valuable it becomes. The more complementary sets are developed, and this creates a self-reinforcing mechanism. But let me explain this. So why are some industries characterized by increasing returns to adoption? There are two reasons. The first one, the learning effects. So the more technology is used, the more firms accumulate experience, also depending on their absorptive capacities. So absorptive capacities are another important concept because it is the phenomenon whereby when firms accumulate knowledge, they also increase their future ability to assimilate information. So the absorptive capacity is the firm's ability to recognize and then utilize new knowledge. So the more technology is used, the more firms accumulate experience with it, and the more the technology is developed and the more efficient it becomes. Furthermore, of course, as a technology is adopted, it generates sales revenues that can be reinvested in further developing the technology, and its performance increases. The second reason are the network effects, or network externalities. So in a market characterized by network externalities, the value of a good increases with the number of other users of the same or similar good. So the number of users of a particular technology is also called installed base. So a user might choose a specific product based on the number of other users who have it, rather than on its benefits. Another important element of the network externalities are the complementary goods. So what are complementary goods? Complementary goods are additional goods and services that enable or enhance the value of another good. They are very important because many products are functional only when complementary goods are available. So a dominant design will also arise because of customers that prefer a specific design, market power of a dominant producer that sets the standard, industry committee that establishes a standard, alliance between firms around a standard. So another thing that is important to say is that rather than maximizing technical performance or some specific characteristics, the dominant designs tend to include a combination of functional characteristics that satisfy the demand of the mainstream market. So an important question could be, so how can a manager identify a dominant design? So there are two different approaches. The first one, dominant design, was defined as a single configuration or a narrow range of configurations that accounted for over 50% of new product sales or new process installations and maintained the 50% market share for at least 4 years. In a more systematic approach, Christensen et al. Demonstrated that the emergence of a dominant design can be traced to the evolution of component technologies and the process whereby their interface arrangements and technical interaction conform to a particular design solutions within an architectural framework. So managers should be aware of some factors that may be essential in the formation of a dominant design. So factors arising from internal organization, for example, core capabilities, absorptive capacity, and marketing, and external environment, for example, effectiveness of intellectual property protection, network externalities, access to complementary assets, market uncertainty. And not considering these factors, firms face a higher risk of being locked out from the evolution of technology. An interesting example of interface arrangements that conform to a particular design can be found in the early US auto industry. So the example of Cadillac cars shows how the design may be aimed at communicating specific features of the product. So Earl, considered the inventor of American car design, realized that instead of making the car go faster, he could simply make it look faster. So the result was a tail-fin design that gave the illusion of speed but added no functional value.
Hi everyone, I'm Antonia and I'm going to continue with the presentation, and I start with the difference between a dominant design and a standard. So some authors use the term dominant design and standard interchangeably. For instance, the term standard wars is used to describe a battle between designs, which then results in a dominant design, as explained in the paper of The Art of Standard Wars by Shapiro. But in the engineering field instead, a standard defines technical specifications for quality, compatibility, adaptability, connectivity, safety, and so on. Through this, they ensure a correct functioning of the product or service. So standards are extremely important because the equipment may be directly or indirectly connected to other products, components, or with the user. Therefore, a standard within a product category has a function purpose and is independent of the market acceptance, can even be enforced by law, while a dominant design directly emerges from market acceptance and adoption. And it's often resulting from a competition between several designs, where one emerges as the dominant one. For instance, the computer basic design is a dominant design, so market choice, while keyboard standards, connectivity, radio frequency, and electrical standards have a function and purpose. It is to say that dominant designs can be composed of several standards, as the example of fast food restaurants shows. So the service is a dominant design, and it's ruled by several standards. And that brings us to the question if some dominant designs can become standards. As I mentioned, a standard results from the reasoned collective choice that enables agreements on solutions of recurrent problems. And it is the balance between the requirement of users, technological possibilities, and cost of producers, as well as constraints imposed by the government, with the aim to benefit the society. Therefore, a dominant design can become a standard, yes, if the design characteristics meet exactly this classification and description, and is boosted by network externalities. Also to mention is that research shows that the bandwagon effect strongly influences the behavior of firms, and network externalities in turning a design into industrial standard. So once a company is in a design battle, how to win? So the result of a battle of designs is the settlement of a specific design. But initially, there's always a period during which there exists a variety of incompatible designs or pioneering firms that are trying to conquer the market with alternative technologies, or the new design competes against one that is already in use. Therefore, there exists a decision-making model for planning the strategy to be followed when being in a battle for dominant design. And this is composed of 3 stages. So we have the market. There the firm must decide on the strategic tactics to deploy to capture the created or invaded market. So here we have the example of Intel, which decided to stop making memories and focused exclusively on microprocessors. The second step is then to analyze the technology that will satisfy the market and to decide on the process with which to develop the technology. So is the design made public or private? Is it open or closed? Here we have the example of the phone of Amazon. And lastly, there are the complementary assets, where the firm examines and the manufacture and commercialization of the new design, and then plan the access to complementary assets to exploit the new design in a mainstream market. So here we show the example of the Amazon Echo as a complementary technology. So in each stage, the firm must also decide whether to go the path and fight alone or to seek alliances. So the more stable the firm's situation in each of the stages is, the less importance will be given to alliance marketing. And also very important for a firm is that it has a large installed base. So there are several strategic maneuvers it can deploy, such as creating a flexible design and a transition path to make it easier to adopt for customers, then generating expectations and managing the expected value so everyone knows what is there and no surprises or disappointments. Having an early presence or applying an aggressive pricing strategy to compete. And lastly, in the case of products with indirect network effects, managing complementary products. So once a firm has won the war, this brings us to the question, how can managers adopt or exploit a dominant design? Well, first of all, a dominant design can provide several advantages to the owner of the technology. So it permits the firm to design standardized and interchangeable parts and to optimize organization and processes for volume and efficiency, as well as a more stable and reliable relations with suppliers, vendors, and customers. And one of the main advantages is the exploitation of intellectual property rights over the design. And this can lead to revenues from royalties, as in the case of Sony's Blu-ray technology, where Sony won the war against Toshiba in the media storage format as they had stronger partnerships. And in the end, Toshiba saw this coming and pulled the technology out of the market. Also to mention are the effects of brand loyalty that can generate through the visibility of the innovation. And the first mover will also benefit from the expertise with the technology and from the bandwagon effect in general, which can then potentially lead to a higher market share. But even if the company is not the first mover, it could benefit from adopting the bandwagon effect because the potential market share would be higher. Another key aspect is the potential and power to block alternative designs from the industry through, for example, software copyrights, which could lead then to the exit of some competitors. And this in return sends a message to producers and consumers that the feature is a must-have for future product, and so it can influence and shape problem-solving techniques in the industry and for the future. And lastly, from the customer point of view, a dominant design reduces product class confusion and can promise decreases in production costs. So we're coming now to our last point. So how to promote a change of dominant design. And this is quite a challenging task because it is necessary to promote a change of opinion in a market to drive the design towards broad adoption and general market acceptance. I will illustrate it with a short example or the key learnings of the standard war in color television. So, the adoption of a new technology can be very slow if you have an unattractive price performance ratio and if it requires the adoption by a large number of players, which may make it quite difficult. And being a first mover does not always result in an advantage. As I said before, winning often requires building alliances. And a really important point for managers to have in mind is that a dominant position in one technology generation does not necessarily mean that you're the leader in the next generation as well. So managers always have to keep an eye on the environment and new innovations, directions, and designs around them and be willing to change. So in general, one can say that a change in dominant design is possible, but very difficult. So it may require us to form an alliance and to create a large base of customers. And managers and firms must have the ability to constantly innovate and have the required capabilities to do so. This closes up our presentation. Here are some of our references. And thank you very much for your attention. We hope you enjoyed our presentation. And if you have any questions or remarks, you can leave us a comment and we will, of course, answer them. Thank you.